Hi, boys and girls. It's Mrs. Smith here. All fourth grade is listening to me read The Wild Robot Escapes, and you will be answering a comprehension question after you finish listening to me read. To help you with that comprehension question, you should be looking at the PDF attached to this assignment on your teacher's Google Classroom, and you'll be able to use text evidence. It's very important that you use text evidence because your teacher probably will be turning it back to you if you do not use text evidence. I'm going to start with The Wild Robot Escapes, Chapter 65, The Whale. The whale swam along the surface of the ocean, keeping our robot safely above water, gently moving her away from the rough waves. Brightbill couldn't believe what he was seeing. Once the shock wore off, he fluttered down to the whale's back and leaned over to his mother. There was no life in her eyes or her body. So the goose did the only thing he could think of. Click! Roz's eyes began to glow. She uttered some human noises, and then, in the language of the animals, the robot said, "Oh, Brightbill, I am so happy to see you." The goose squawked with joy and hugged his mother's face. But she didn't move. She couldn't move. The robot had lost the use of her limbs. There were a few tense minutes and a few nervous glances, but as the sun beat down and the wind rushed over her, Roz felt her body drying out. Slowly, gradually, power returned to her arms and then her legs, and then she sat up and hugged her son. Brightbill breathed a sigh of relief. "Mama, when you disappeared below the water, I thought you were gone forever." "Oh, so did I," said Roz. "As I sank deeper and deeper, the ocean squeezed my body tighter and tighter, and I lost control of my legs and arms. The last thing I remember was a huge shape swimming toward me, and then I automatically shut down." "That huge shape was a whale," squawked Goose. "We're riding on her back right now." A low moan rumbled up through the whale's body. She splashed the water with her fins and took a long, wheezing breaths and sprayed mist high into the air. Roz paid close attention to the whale's behavior and understood what she was saying. The whale's name was Coral, and she was thrilled to meet our friends. She explained that the flock of geese had flown over the bay and regaled the coastal birds with an amazing story of a wild robot and her son, the goose. You can see the whale, and you can see the robot on top of the whale named Coral. The coastal birds shared the story with the fish and the dolphins and anybody who would listen, and in time, the story spread to every creature in the bay. When Coral saw the robot rowing and the goose flying overhead, she knew it had to be Roz and Brightbill. So she swam behind them in case she could be helpful, and it was a good thing she did. As Coral ferried our friends across the bay, the waves grew smaller and the coastline grew larger. Houses poked out of the trees, sunbathers relaxed on the rocks, boats motored away from the piers. With so many humans around, Roz had to be careful. She lay flat against Coral's back, while Brightbill flew ahead and scouted out the coastline. Again, he's scouting out. The goose directed the whale to quiet, empty cove, and soon the robot was standing in the dry land again. Roz asked if there was some way she could repay Coral for saving her life, but the whale was happy to help. She winked one of her enormous eyes, and then she sank beneath the waves. Our friends marched inland, feeling lucky and grateful. But as they thought about the journey still to come, their good feelings gradually turned gloomy. Roz had nearly died crossing the bay, and at some point, to get back to the island, she would have to cross the entire ocean. Chapter 66, The New Land. Zoom! Vroom! Shoom! Think to yourself right now, what type of figurative language is that considered? Zoom, vroom, shoom. Did you think in your head? Onomatopoeia. That is exactly it. You did it. Automobiles were gliding down the road, passing the fields and forests, clusters of houses. None of the passengers had an idea that a robot and a goose were hiding from the weeds. Our friends had been hiding there for some time, waiting for the traffic to clear, but the automobiles kept coming. Roz noticed a drainage pipe that crossed under the road. The pipe was dark and grimy, but travelers were getting desperate. Moving through this new land was difficult. There were more humans and robots and buildings and roads than ever before. Roz and Brightbill traveled far out of their way in wide circles just to avoid small towns. As the days passed, the scenery looked more familiar to Brightbill. He remembered flying over these lands on his first migration. He knew the towns would only get larger and closer together, and the farther they went. It would be much faster to sneak through the towns than to continue going around them. So, as night fell, Roz put on fresh camouflage. With her son watching from the sky, she crept into town. So let's think. Roz has to put on some camouflage. Think of what you would do if you were trying to camouflage through your neighborhood. What would you put on yourself that people wouldn't be able to spy you as you and you would be something else? Think about what she did when she was in the forest. Think about what she did when she was in the farmlands. Now she's going through the neighborhoods. What camouflage would she put on? Think about that. Have your prediction and see if you're correct. Chapter 67, The Town. Pookie was a big little dog. Here he is. Her body was round, her legs were short, her ears were long. Although the dog looked funny, she was serious about protecting her home. She slapped the front paws on the windowsill, stared into the night to make sure all was well outside. But all was not well. A new clump of weeds had mysteriously sprouted in the yard. Pookie needed to take a closer look. I wonder what that weeds or clump of weeds is. The dog whined by the back door until someone could let her out. Then she hurried across the porch, down the steps, and over the mysterious weeds. As Pookie approached, a raspy growl sounded in her throat. "Urgh." "Where did those weeds come from?" she said to herself, sniffing. "They weren't here this afternoon." The weeds rustled in the breeze, and that was enough to set Pookie off. The dog barked and barked and barked. And then, astonishingly, the weeds spoke to her in a clear, calm voice. "I am sorry to disturb you," said the weeds. Pookie stopped barking. "I was hoping to pass through here without being seen," said the weeds. "But you saw me, and you were a very good guard dog." Pookie resumed barking. No, shh, 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 said the weeds. "Please stop barking." But there was no stopping Pookie. The clump of weeds decided to move. Like some sort of monster, the weeds rose up on the two legs and leaped over the fence in the neighboring yard. Felix had heard the Pookie barking next door, and when the weedy monster landed in his yard, he started barking as well. Soon the monster kept going, leaping fences from one yard to the next. Every house in the neighborhood seemed to have a dog, and they all began barking after the weedy monster. Reader, you and I know the monster was actually our robot in disguise. But the dogs never did figure out what happened that night. Now think to yourself, is that what you thought about as your camouflage that you might do in your neighborhood? The same one? Or did you have a different idea? Roz finally slunk in the shadows behind the school building and listening as the chorus of dogs settled down. "That didn't go well," said the goose as he landed beside his mother. "No, it did not," said the robot. "This will only be tougher in daylight. I know, we'll have to try something else." Early the next morning, the sun started rising. Automobiles started driving. Robots started running errands. However, one of the robots was not like the rest. Roz had picked every speck of dirt from her body, and now she blended in with all the normal robots, going about their normal morning routines. Our robot was hiding in plain sight. Roz marched through the town, turning left and right down the streets, as Brightbill watched from above. Along the way, she passed a wide variety of robots, all going about their business. There was even another Rozum robot marching around, who looked identical to our Roz, except she was shinier and had a different unit number. It occurred to Rozum Unit 7134 that if anyone noticed her unit number, it might bring a swift response from the Ricos. But as she continued past houses and shops and humans and robots, they didn't seem to be in any danger. Everything was going smoothly until she heard in the airship flying toward the town. Our robot was feeling like dread as she waited for the sleek white ship to appear. If the Ricos found her now, there would be no escape. But the ship that appeared wasn't white. It was black, and it flew without stopping. Roz was safe, and suddenly she was dreaming about airships. Returning to the island would be so easy with a ship. She and the Bright Bill would climb in, fire up the engines, and be home in no time. But it was impossible dream. There was no safe way for a robot to get to an airship. She had to find some other way home. First, she had to find her way out of this town. So Roz focused on her surroundings and continued marching along the sidewalks, just like a normal robot. Chapter 68, The Station. At the edge of the town, there were houses stopped, and the countryside began was a small train station. 2 platforms sat on either side of the tracks. Humans and robots were standing around, waiting for the next train to arrive. Nobody paid any attention to our robot, and she calmly marched past. When Roz was safely out of sight, she slipped into the woods where Bright Bill was hiding. The goose opened his mouth to speak, but the station bell started ringing. Ding, 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 ding. Speeding down the tracks was a passenger train. A whistle blew. Woo, woo, woo. The train gently braked, and a minute later, it became a smooth stop at the station. Passengers burst out of the cars, while others stepped aboard. The first 9 cars were reserved for humans and had wide windows and comfortable seats, and only robots allowed in those cars were service robots, who brought food and drinks to the human passengers. All other robots were confined to windowless car at the end of the train. This reminds me of something. Can you make a connection to this? The robots had to be in a different train cars than the humans. The humans were able to get all these wonderful windows, and the robots had to get windowless spot. What does that remind you of? Can you make a connection? I'm thinking one in my head right now. Where is it going? Whispered Bright Bill as she peeked out of the bush. The sign says this is the express train to the city, whispered Roz. The goose turned to his mother. We have to go past the city to get home. This train could save us a lot of time. We should hop on. The robot turned to her son. I don't think that's a good idea. It's too risky. Ma, I watched you walk through the town and no one even noticed you. We'll be fine. Let's follow those robots into the last car. I'll find a hiding spot, and we'll be in the city before you know it. Roz had questions. How large is this city? Do you know where to go? What if we get lost? Relax, Ma. My pigeon friend Graybeak lives there, and she'll be happy to help us. A voice called over the loudspeaker, and the last couple of passengers hurried along the platform. I'm going to check it out, said Bright Bill. With a quick flurry of wing beats, he fluttered out from the brush and onto the roof of the last train car. The goose lowered his neck and looked through the open door. Then he looked back and waved for his mother to join him. A whistle blew and Bright Bill waved faster. Roz had little choice, so she slipped out of the trees and marched onto the platform. I'm here, Ma. Bright Bill pointed to the door way beneath him. Everything about his situation made our robots nervous. Her survival instincts were tingling. Roz looked up at her son on the roof, and then she stepped through the train door. But before Bright Bill could flutter in behind her, the door slid closed, and the train began to move. Oh no. Bright Bill is separated from Roz. I wonder when or if they will ever reunite. So I'm wondering, do you have any predictions? So we're going to stop there today. You are now going to go into the comprehension questions, which is attached to this assignment in Google Classroom. And you're going to answer the question, how did the whale Coral help Roz? You have to use text evidence. So I need you to go back into the PDF that is attached of chapter 65. And it has the couple pages about the chapter. I want you to go in there. I want you to use text evidence. Your teachers want you to use text evidence. It says it in the answer. You'll probably have this assignment returned if you don't use text evidence. So make sure you do. I hope you have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed listening to Wild Robot Escapes today.